Hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, just making sure everything's working. We're recording. Joel Salatin, for my viewers who don't know, he is the owner of Polyface Farms in Swoope, Virginia. That's how you say it, right?
Yeah, Swope.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. And yeah, it's a massive regenerative farm, and he's one of the leaders in the whole regenerative agriculture movement. And he's been doing it for decades and decades, and he's been on numerous podcasts and news programs, documentaries such as Food Inc. And that's actually where I got to know you through Food Inc. And then I watched your entire podcast on Joe Rogan multiple times, and because some of the topics you guys were talking about, the ecological complexities of the way you farm were so interesting to me. I had to rewatch it, and I want to say that you influenced my trajectory in my career a little bit because I'm an ecologist right now. I'm a master's in conservation biology right now, but my specific topic is regenerative animal agriculture. So working with ecosystems to produce animal products. That's kind of what I want to specialize in. And that's in large part because of your work that I consumed, your documentary appearances and podcasts. Most viewers probably already know you and what you do, but if you would like, could you introduce yourself and your farm in Virginia?
sure. Yeah, well, I'm Joel Salatin. We have a farm here in Virginia, Shenandoah Valley. We've been here since 1961. I'm second generation. The farm is now pretty much day-to-day operations are run by our son Daniel, and we uh, are in pastured livestock. So we do have personal gardens and some fruit trees and things, but primarily we're in beef, pork, chicken, both eggs and meat, turkey, rabbit, lamb, duck, and a lot of wildlife,
Yeah, native wildlife, right?
native wildlife. Yeah,
Wow. Okay. I really want to visit. I'm planning on visiting this summer. If not this summer, definitely next summer. But I'm also kind of packed with I'm doing conservation expeditions across the globe right now for my master's program that I'm in with
sure.
Miami University. Like this July, I'll be in Kenya working with Maasai pastoralists. So
Okay, yeah,
I'm reading up on African ecology here. As you can see, this is a
yeah,
hyena
uh-huh,
ecology right here.
yeah, yeah.
It's fascinating stuff for me because I've always been into wildlife species. I've had a long list of pets, but then I just gravitated more toward protecting their world instead of keeping them for my own enjoyment and my own. I guess I learned from them, but I just want to protect the remaining wilderness in Earth. So I just shifted into that. So that's what I want to do, and the best way I see doing it with my interests is regenerative agriculture. So that's why I'm very glad to start this chat with you. I got all these questions lined up. I don't want to waste too much of your time. I know you're quite busy.
All
Let's
right,
see
well,
here.
I'm ready to go with you. Yes.
All right. So since you just introduced yourself, could you explain why you chose the name Polyface and yeah, the meaning behind that?
Yeah, well, originally, of course, we wanted to, when I came back to the farm September 24, 1982, we wanted to incorporate for branding and for, liability protection, tax reasons, all sorts of reasons to have a business.
Mhm.
And so we said, well, what do we want to be? Dad wanted to be Salatin Incorporated. I said, no, this is bigger than us. This is bigger than our family. Maybe there'll be a day when a Salatin isn't running this place. Maybe we better broaden it out a little bit. So we thought about it, and I wanted to be interface, the interfacing of forest, water, and open land. Those three great environments: forest, open land, and water. And so we submitted that to the State Corporation Commission, and there was already an interface incorporated in Virginia, so we couldn't use that one. And I was sitting there milking the cow. We milked a couple of Guernsey cows at the time. He walked into the barn, there I was milking, and he said, "Well, they had the paperwork that they turned us down." And I was just sitting there. I said, "Well, goodness, shoot, we can't be interface. Well, if we can't be interface, let's be many face,
Yeah.
polyface." And so that's literally how it was born. That's how it was
Okay.
born.
Nice. Because I for a moment I thought it was because you were promoting biodiversity because of monoculture and polyculture. I thought that was one of the reasons as well. Yeah,
Yes,
because
it is. It's
okay,
it the answer is all the above. Yeah,
okay,
I mean,
gotcha.
we knew we'd be doing multiple enterprises, multiple species, multiple habitats, uh,
Yeah.
multiple environments, and so yeah, it was all the above.
Okay. And for viewers who may not know the difference between monoculture and polyculture, and why monoculture isn't the most efficient way to produce food long term and the most ecologically friendly one either. Why is polyculture better? Could you talk about that a little bit and why it's good for the environment?
Sure. Well, polyculture creates a lot of diversity within the biological community, so that not only do you have checks and balances, but you also have symbiosis, and so both of those are important. And one tends to, to create boundaries toward balance. Another one tends to create opportunities toward abundance. And so both of those are critical in the polyculture idea. Monoculture, uh, nature doesn't have any monocultures. There's no place in nature that you can go and find a monoculture. So it violates the most basic pattern
Yeah.
of ecosystems. And all natural ecosystems are polycultures. And so in our domestic production, we're constantly looking for how many more little, diverse biological niches can we fill with a complementary species, whether it's plant or animal. And that actually creates more production per acre than a monoculture, even a well-tended monoculture.
Yeah. I love that sentence where you said it's per acre, it's more production. I'm always looking for peer-reviewed literature to support claims like that because I'm also making similar claims because I want to promote regenerative agriculture. I'm working on a short documentary right now on regenerative animal agriculture, and I'm working with three regenerative farmers right now to make it. Will Harris of White Oak Pastures, I'm working with him. I'm working with a regenerative farmer in northern Michigan named Wendy Babcock. She's the owner of Serendipity Farms in Wolverine, Michigan. And the third farmer I'm working with is Mark McAfee, and he's the owner of Raw Farm in Fresno, California. So I traveled to their farms and stayed at their farms for a couple days, few days each, and recorded footage. So that's kind of my magnum opus that I'm working on right now. And I set a self-imposed deadline to have it finished by the end of this summer, and then I'm going to submit it to film festivals. But I don't know if it's going to be as influential as Food Inc., but it's my first short documentary. It's pretty much independently made, so it's kind of going to be just a learning process for me, but I want to have it finished. That's the hard part. And I have written a book and self-published a book.
Ah,
The book is
uh-huh.
called Iconic Animals of the North,
Okay. Uh-huh. Yeah. Good.
and it's a fact-filled exploration of northern wildlife. So it's just kind of a field guide, but I dive a little bit deeper into each
Uh-huh.
species than a field guide would. But there's a total of 23 species here.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Just so you
great.
know a
I,
little bit of where I'm coming from.
yeah, I think it comes as a shock. One of my favorite statements to, people but it comes as a shock to them that 500 years ago, North America produced more food than it does today.
Yeah.
And people just don't generally think they assume with John Deere tractors and chemical fertilizers
Mhm.
and concentrated animal feeding operations and corn and soybeans. Surely we produce more food than we did 500 years ago in North America, but we don't.
Yeah.
Now, all that food was not eaten by people. We had 200 million beavers that ate more vegetables than all the people in North America today. We
Yeah.
had, a million at least wolves that
Mhm.
need 20 pounds of meat a day.
Wow.
Um, that's 20 million pounds of meat. There were, over a million bison cows. So and not that's not counting passenger pigeons that blocked out the sun for 3 days. I mean, the abundance was just phenomenal, and that was all done with without modern modern means.
Oh yeah, just natural ecosystems, native species that already existed on the land, on the continent.
Yeah,
And
well, and let's not minimize the effect of the Native Americans
oh
and
yeah.
their very clear management techniques. The indigenous people groups from the Pacific to the Atlantic manipulated their ecosystems. This was not a wild place. It was a very, very carefully manicured ecosystem by the indigenous people groups.
Wow, see, I knew of that, but I didn't know it was that carefully managed. I thought it was like they were very sustainably taking the resources out of there. But do you recommend any books or articles where I can dive deeper into that?
Well, Fire by Stephen Pine is a good one.
Okay.
Um, Fire in America, I think that's the title of it. Eh, I have to look at it on my shelf there, but
A
Fire in
lot of
America
literature right behind you.
by Stephen Pine, um, and he talks about how the Native Americans used fire to manipulate the grasslands. So here in the east of the Mississippi, very very dense impenetrable forests are common, and those didn't exist before the Europeans came. The dense, impenetrable eastern forests of America are completely a European construct. The Native Americans did not like dense forests because, you know, enemies could creep up on you,
Yeah.
and they wanted to be able to see out, and they wanted silvopasture. Silvopasture is like a park. It's widely spaced trees with grass underneath, and they wanted silvopasture to be able to bring in the elk and the bison, under the trees for hunting
Mhm.
and and deer and turkey and things like that. A lot of wildlife it can't thrive in deep forest like turkeys. Turkeys can't have babies in deep forest because there aren't enough bugs. The only way they can get enough bugs to raise their young is in pasture in prairie edge effect where there's grasshoppers and crickets and things like that. You don't find grasshoppers and crickets in deep woods. And
Okay.
so, but they need the deep woods for protection, but they don't get their food there. So you see a lot of it, as you know, as a biologist, the most productive places are at the edges where water and open or open land and forest, those edges, most most especially wild animals need a little bit of both. They don't like just one or the other. They want a little bit of both, and so
Yeah.
that's why this edge is so valuable.
That's exactly the the type of land we're searching for right now, my family and I, to purchase for farming and running a homestead type operation where there's going to be grassland, but also forest, because that's just ideal for us. We could let the animals kind of choose if they want to be at the edge of the forest or be more in the grassland, because the grassland is its own ecosystem, and we need both. We need all the ecosystems. We can't just plant
Right,
trees everywhere. Yeah.
right. Hmm.
I recently talked about grassland ecosystems with Russian scientist Nikita Zimov, who he's trying to reconstruct a huge grassland ecosystem in Russia.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard of him and
Yes,
Pleistocene
I
Park.
have. Yeah, yeah. I've seen some video clips of some of the things that he's done, where he's tried to
Yeah,
introduce large megafauna back into the.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So that just goes to show like the importance of grassland ecosystems because it's not just about forests. We need all the ecosystems and real quick, throughout this conversation, should I be wary of like calling out large companies that support monoculture, like
Oh no,
Fritos and Lay's and okay,
no, not at
even
all. Not at all.
Coca-Cola?
No,
Okay.
you can take on anybody you want. McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, whatever. It's just fine with me.
Okay, I'm always worried about like these huge companies like shutting down my channel and stuff. So I try not to push it, but I don't know if you know the limitations on that. There is a form of monoculture, not monoculture, but corn agriculture that isn't monoculture, right? That's what Mark McAfee of Raw Farm was telling me about because he does that on his land where it's diversified corn production, where it's not just corn growing on the soil, but the corn is mixed in with other species of plants and it's growing more naturally than the traditional monocultural production of corn, where there's pesticides and herbicides. He doesn't use any of the sides, but he's still producing corn in a natural way. So do you know anything about that? And is it better
Well,
grain?
these pendulums, these cultural pendulums swing, they swing off balance routinely. And corn is certainly one of them. I mean, corn originated here in Mesoamerica. I mean, if there is a as an indigenous heritage plant in North America, it's corn.
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
it's not tomatoes. Tomatoes were South America.
I
Uh,
see.
and so it's corn, and and so we corn is a wonderful plant. I mean, it's an incredible uh, producer of biomass, carbohydrate, energy. It's adapted to a wide level of environments. So corn is a wonderful food. It's a wonderful plant,
Okay.
but just like a cow is a wonderful creature, but when you put it in a feedlot and shoot it up with antibiotics and make live it feed it on corn and soybeans, it's a different nutrition, it's a different environmental calculation, environmental balance sheet
Yeah.
than cattle grown in a closely managed, controlled grazing program.
Yeah.
And so corn's the same way. And so what's happened is we have taken corn and we have, run that pendulum way out here to a very a mechanical anti-biological level.
Yeah.
And so the result is that the backlash against it, then, well, let's demonize it all. Let's get rid of corn. And no, I disagree completely. I think that corn is a wonderful plant when used properly.
Yeah. So it's not to blame the food product, it's how it's produced, and that's what we got to focus on. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
It reminds me what you just said of an infographic by this book I read called Sacred Cow. And in that book, there's an infographic that said, it's not the cow, it's the how. And it was
Yeah.
just showing like the differences in production. So same thing with corn. Okay. Um, it's not the corn, it's like it's how it's born. Yeah, rhyme it. Um, but I just thought of that on the spot. That was probably corny, but it's so people get the idea. Um, I wanted to talk about when you bought Polyface Farm, the land for it. I read up that it was worn out land, it was eroded and abused. And it was essentially an abused farm in the area near Staunton. And you guys kind of rewilded it by using nature as a pattern. So could you talk about that in depth? Because yeah, we would love to. Certainly would love to learn how you rewilded an eroded piece of land and made it like what it is now.
Yeah. So what I mean, when we came here, yeah, it was gullies. Our deepest gully we measured was 16 feet deep, 16 feet. So imagine a gully 16 feet deep. I mean, the throat on the top has to be like 25 feet wide, to get 16 feet deep down to the bottom. So,
Mhm.
uh, and we had large areas that were just solid rock, just solid rock. And so, the first thing was to try to stop the erosion, stop the negative. I mean, first you have to stop what's going on that's bad before you can actually start um, remediating to the positive.
Mhm.
And so early on, I can remember many hours of stacking branches down in the bottom of these gullies, or piling a little nest of rocks down in the bottom to slow the water down. And of course, the other thing was to fence the cows out so they couldn't just keep running through them, and keep everything denuded. And very soon, within just a short period of time, I mean, when I'm saying short period of time, I'm saying in fewer than 10 years, those areas they sprouted trees, started seeing, vegetation growing up around the edges and the sides of them, and the water cleaned up. There wasn't active erosion
Hmm.
going on. Then we planted a lot of trees. We planted many acres of trees on these steep hillsides to get vegetation on them and get them, treed up. And then, of course, we started the controlled grazing, where we were starting to move the cows. Not fast at the beginning, and we thought we were we thought we were really something by moving the cows every couple of weeks.
Hmm.
But by about 1970, I was in college. By the late 70s, we started moving them every day, and that was a game changer. Moving them every day was a game changer. We got a chipper and began chipping junk wood so we could compost, and we began composting, and that was a game changer. And so what happened was, over time, these big kind of rock galls gradually filled in with soil, like just like a scab on you what skin your hand, and you've got this scab on there, and that scab, it doesn't heal from the inside out; it heals from the outside in. And the edges of that scab flake off and flake off and flake off, and finally you're down to this little itty bitty piece inside. You scrape that off, and you got new skin underneath. That's exactly the way these big quarter-acre rock galls were. Every year, about 18 inches of soil would grow up on the edges and grow up on the edges, and it just kept coming in, kept coming in. And then
Wow, that's amazing.
it took 40 years, but in 40 years, all of those rock areas now have a foot of soil on them. It's not 3 or 5 feet like it was, 400 years ago, but it's a foot
Yeah.
thick. And we had so much of this that Dad actually poured concrete in tires, and pushed a half-inch pipe in them. And my brother and I, we were little kids, and we could heave these concrete tires off the tractor platform as he drove slowly through the field. And then he'd go and stick electric fence stakes down in those little half-inch pipes in the concrete, like volleyball stanchions. And that's the way we built electric fence back in the 60s and early 70s.
Oh,
Now,
wow.
all those areas have 12 inches of soil on them, and they hold an electric fence stake. So that took some time, but yeah, it's
So
pretty dramatic to realize that in my lifetime I have watched that level of change, on the place.
Yeah, so that's amazing how what you guys created a foot, you said, of topsoil now in that rocky
Yeah,
area.
well, yeah, certainly on, over those rocky areas. Yes.
Okay. So you essentially terraformed the 500 acres, or is it 550 or 500 acres polyface?
Yeah. Well, the original was 550 acres,
Hmm.
and then 10 years ago we added a neighbor's 100, and then 3 years ago we added another neighbor's 293. So right now we're at 950.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, that's amazing. So you essentially terraformed that land, and made it more wild and natural. And there's talk of terraforming Mars and stuff, going to Mars, but it's all kind of funny to me because we can't even properly terraform Earth yet, and we're trying to
Yeah.
go to different planets. So I think we
Yeah.
got to prioritize that.
Yes. I couldn't agree with you more. Let's fix our own before we go tear up somebody else.
I know. And then the space people get mad at me. They say like, "Oh, I'm against learning about space, but I'm not against that. I want to prioritize it." So rotational grazing helped you increase the production of the grass and the soil as well. Just rotating, you said rotating was huge. Rotating the
Yeah.
cattle.
Hmm.
Okay. Rotating. Using portable electric fencing, right? Is that the
Yeah.
main method that you? Okay.
Yeah. So the portable electric fencing. Well, I mean, the breakthrough. I mean, we were moving the cows on a what I would call a lazy rotation of, it initially it was every couple of weeks, and it got to be a week, and then we got to about every 4 days, and boy, we thought we were really cooking, and
Hmm.
there in the late '70s, one summer off of college, I spent the month of July hand digging little post holes all over around the field edges. And we finally got in what I will call our permanent network, where we actually were able to permanently fence the fields. And I call these the stringers of a ladder. And then the portable electric fence wire are the rungs of the ladder. And without the stringers, you have to put up, all four boundaries every day, and it gets pretty arduous. But if all you have to do is throw a rung across the two stringers, then that makes it real easy. So once we got that basic permanent network in and defined, all right, this is forest, this is field, this is riparian, and we identified that so we could just run across with a portable fence or rung.
Hmm.
That was a game changer. And then we dropped to daily moves, moving every day, and that took us from 25 miles an hour to 60 miles an hour in literally overnight. It was quite dramatic.
You also created ponds on the land as well, right? Was that just for increasing biodiversity or also for other reasons to create the ponds?
Yeah, well, initially the ponds were created for water. If you're going to move these cows around, you got to have water.
Okay.
And so, back in the early days, we only had 20 cows, 15 to 20 cows. And so, the herd wasn't that big. And a little pump, with a stock tank, with a 300 or 400 gallon stock tank, you could give them enough water for the day. And so we built these little ponds. I mean, I'm saying little ponds, the goodness, the size of a swimming pool around the edges of the fields so that we could pump water out into a tank. We didn't want the cows to soil the ponds. We wanted to, but the ponds gave us inventory, so we could pump the water out into a stock tank and let the cattle drink. The
Okay.
other, so it was initially to be able to get water
Mhm.
uh, to them. We did everything from little 12-volt pumps to, I used to wobble pump with the old 1850s wobble pumps they used on steam engines.
Oh wow.
We had different kinds of little pumping things, but then I got interested in gravity, of course, reading permaculture and things like that. And so I went up with a shovel and a pick, and I went up to a little kind of a seep draw that we had there that had a trickle of water in it. It was a what would be called an ephemeral water. It goes
Mhm.
dry in July and August, but 9 months of the year it has water running, a little bit of trickle of running water in it. So I just took the shovel and pick up there and made a bathtub size little containment pond, stuck a 3/4 inch black plastic pipe through the dam, and laid that pipe out. And man, oh man, we had water. And then my head started spinning on, how can we get higher? How can we get more water? And so then in 1989, we did a logging project where we traded 30 acres of timber for about 2.5 miles of graded road up the mountain, and that got us into some elevation where we could build a pond up in a valley, up on higher grade, and that was the beginning of what today has become a multi-pond network, interconnected, running a 12-mile network of inch and a quarter buried water line that dispenses 70 pound per square inch water over the entire farm without any electricity or pumps, all gravity,
It's all gravity. Okay.
all gravity.
That's amazing. So 12 miles because it curves so much
Yeah,
throughout the
yeah.
five
Well,
legs.
because
Okay.
it runs around the edge of all the fields, so you've got all these different legs. It's a whole like a spider web. It
Oh
uh,
yeah, yeah,
goes
God.
out it goes out around all the field edges. So there's water
Man.
everywhere. Um, so that was
Okay.
a major thing. The other thing that I think is important to point out about the healing the land initially was the shade mobile. That was one of the first things that Dad made. I think we started in 1969, and he reckoned that one of our big problems was losing manure under trees. The cows would go under trees, and as we started moving them around, you know, they needed shade, or at least we felt like they did in a hot summer. And we didn't have trees everywhere, or we had trees at the edge of the fields, and the cows would push up under the trees along the edge of the fields. Well, he said, well, we don't want the manure under the trees. We want the manure out in the field where it can grow some grass.
Yeah.
And so he built a 50-foot by 20-foot wide portable shade mobile using an old burned out mobile home chassis as a basic framework,
Mhm.
and expanded it. And that was big enough for 100 cows. And I can tell you that was instrumental in moving our fertility forward, because now we basically had a portable shade tree. Not
Yeah.
only did it make the cattle very comfortable, but it allowed us to direct their manure and urine. Today, you're going to drop it right here. Tomorrow, you're going to drop it
Wow.
right there. And we could park that on a set of blackberries or rocks or weeds or something, and we could and it had a 5 year halo. It made a dark green spot for 5 years because the roof kept the urine. The urine is what has the main part of the nitrogen in it. It
Mhm.
kept the urine from evaporating. So you get
Wow.
you get the double benefit of the hoof action, along with all of that concentrated manure and urine, and you get a tremendous. We could go on to a set of weeds or brambles, and the next year it was nothing but clover without planting a seed. It's just that fertility and impaction treatment.
That
And
really shows the power of mobile construction, mobile infrastructures.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, yeah.
that's
And
amazing.
so today we still use mobile shade mobiles, and we believe that mobile shade mobiles are absolutely foundational to
It's such a simple construction,
management.
but it has such good ecological benefits. It's amazing. Because I also noticed because we keep poultry in our backyard property here, and I noticed like sometimes their manure dries up because of the sun that it's exposed to, and it just ends up like a chip on top of the grass, and it never even reaches the soil. So it makes sense that shade would keep the moisture there and help it kind of sink into the soil. So
Right.
sometimes I take my water hose and I just like spray
Yeah.
the manure down into the grass. Is that something you do as well?
Yes, and of course, as you know, we run thousands and thousands of chickens,
Yeah.
and so initially our ponds were, we built these little ponds to be able to have a water inventory for the livestock. But then over time, we built bigger ponds to develop irrigation potential, and so now we have four K line irrigation systems with larger ponds
Mhm.
that we can then irrigate, not the whole farm, but a lot of it. And the main thing we did this for was to be able, if we're in a dry spell, to be able to get water behind the chickens immediately, so we get that all that nitrogen pushed into the ground,
I see.
so we don't lose the fertility from the chicken manure. Yeah.
And I also read up or listened on a podcast you saying that you run your chickens right after your cows, so they break up the cow patties. Is that something you still do?
Oh yes, yeah, that's what the shade the I'm sorry, the egg mobiles, um, and those chickens free range. Those are not meat chickens. Those are egg laying chickens, and
Okay.
so they follow the cows about 3 or 4 days, scratch through the cow patties,
I
eat
see.
out the fly larvae, and they also pick up the crickets and grasshoppers that the cows have exposed from their grazing. So it's
Oh
a
yeah, because they trimmed the grass down, so there's nowhere for them to hide from
That's
the
right.
chickens.
That's
Okay,
right.
that's fascinating as well. The giant chicken structure that you guys have, is it called the Millennium Feather Net, where it's
Yes.
like a
Yeah,
house? Yeah.
that's correct. It's like a big A-frame, huh?
That is a fascinating infrastructure, and there's videos of you, millions of views on YouTube where you're like right in front of it, talking and explaining about it. And I see that they're all Rhode Island Reds and Barred Rock chickens in that Millennium Feathernet.
Uh-huh.
What is the reason you chose those two breeds, only those two?
Well, yeah, I don't know what all you've seen. I can just tell you where we are right now. But historically, we've used non-hybrid traditional varieties like Barred Rocks, Rhode Island Reds,
Okay.
Black Australorps, Silver Laced Wyandottes, New Hampshire Reds. But about 10 years ago, we began hatching our own birds
Hmm.
uh, from our own flock, and we now are hatching all of our own pullets. And it's still very heavily Barred Rock influenced, but they're not they're not always true, and that's fine. We're just taking the old hens. Are you old, um, healthy, and productive? And if you're old, healthy, and productive, we want you to make our next generation of chicks.
Wow. So the chickens you have lay eggs that are fertilized by your own roosters, and then you
Yes,
incubate
yes,
those. Okay. Or
yes.
does the mother hens incubate them, or do you guys use a
No,
machine?
we gather those eggs and incubate them in incubators. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. I incubated a set of quail eggs that I got from a quail breeder. She's a very reputable quail breeder in Canada, because I live in Michigan, southeastern Michigan, where the border of Canada is pretty close by. So I drove 45 minutes to this quail hatchery and purchased 12 quail eggs, and I have an incubator in my closet. It's all been,
Hmm.
set up, and well,
Yeah.
now it's all put away, but it was set up right here where I am, and it had a
Hmm.
really good hatch rate. I had 75% of the eggs hatched, which is pretty good
Oh,
according to her.
yeah.
That was a really cool experience because that was the first time I incubated eggs and hatched them.
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah.
raised the quails in a coop that I built. It was a really rewarding project.
Uh-huh.
They weren't my first livestock species. My first animals I got for food were four Rhode Island Reds from Tractor Supply Company, and
Hmm.
that was during COVID. And everybody was inside. I had nothing to do. I couldn't go out much, so I decided to just buy these chicks and get a brooder set up, and that was a very good decision because that was one of the most rewarding projects I've ever pursued. It got me to build a chicken coop in my backyard. I just bought wood from Home Depot and used wood that we had in our garage. And I
Hmm.
basically made like a cubicle chicken coop. It wasn't mobile. I didn't know how to make a mobile one, but I made a chicken run and I tried to keep it as natural as possible. So I controlled how much they grazed the grass and created a little micro ecosystem.
Sure. Sure.
So,
That's great.
yeah, Rhode Island Reds always have a special place in my heart because that was the first chicken that I ever,
Yeah.
purchased.
Yeah.
So when
Yeah.
I saw those hundreds of Rhode Island Reds under your Millennium Feather Net, it was just a
Uh,
beautiful sight to see.
yeah. Yeah.
And the Barred Rocks as well. That was my second breed.
Hmm.
But my next question is related to cows, cattle. So are your cows are your cows grass fed and finished, or are they grain finished?
No, our cows get no grain whatsoever.
Oh wow. Because the reason I ask is because the typical American consumer palate is geared toward the softer steak that are grain fed. Like they're so like they love that taste and texture so much that sometimes they can't even enjoy a grass fed and finished steak because it's too tough for them. So, but there is a growing demand for the grass fed and finished steak as well. So Could you talk a little bit about that? Because a lot of Americans can't, they don't want to purchase grass-fed and finished because that's not what in their mind what a steak should feel like in their mouth, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are a lot of these kinds of things that that when you grow up with a certain, with a certain expectation or yeah, well, a certain experience, you just assume that that's the way it's supposed to be.
Mhm,
And but the fact is that a tremendous number of grass finished beef is harvested too early. It's not actually finished. And so an animal needs to be at least three-quarter of its mother's mature weight before it'll actually put on intramuscular fat. The
mhm,
intramuscular fat is where the taste and the eating quality comes from. Too many people don't aren't managing their forage to a point where the forage is good enough to put that fat on them. And number two, keeping their animals long enough. Often this takes, 30, even 32, 33 months to get them to this finished rate.
mhm.
And and so to do that, you have to be patient and wait. A lot of it is producers, but secondly, a lot of it is people need to learn. I mean, there are whole cookbooks on how to cook a grass finished steak,
Oh
uh,
wow.
and so there's a gourmet, there's a bit of a skill in cooking as well,
Okay.
and I would say in processing as well at the slaughterhouse. One of the things that people don't realize is that slaughterhouses have a HACCP plan, hazardous analysis critical control point plan, which demands that the carcass temperature cool down within a certain time frame. Well, if you run a slaughterhouse in order to not be written up with a non-compliance, you want to make sure that all of your carcasses cool down within your HACCP plan within the time period. So that means you're going to calibrate your cooling room to where it can cool the fattest carcass within your licensing constraints. Well, what's the fattest carcass? The fattest carcass is a grain-fed feedlot carcass with 6 inches of fat hanging on it.
Mhm.
We go in there with a grass finished carcass with 1 inch of hanging fat on it, and it cools way, way faster. Well,
Okay.
there's an enzyme produced when an herbivore dies. It produces an enzyme called calpains. Calpains, the cal is for calcium. Calpains is an enzyme that relaxes the connective tissue, but it only works at ambient temperature. As soon as it gets cold, it stops working. So what happens is many times we take this fine beef in, it's slaughtered, and it gets shoved in that chill room and it cools too fast before the calpains is able to work. That's why animals, deer and elk and stuff harvested in the wild are never tough because they're never refrigerated for at least an hour after being shot, after being killed. And
Mhm.
so the processing can have a lot to do with the quality of the meat too, by short chilling, by cooling too fast and
Mhm.
not letting that meat go clear through its whole relaxation, its normal ambient temperature relaxation procedure.
Wow. Okay, so there's a lot of ways to make the texture
Yeah.
grass-fed and finished similar to the grain finished. Okay.
Yes.
I,
Yes.
I personally prefer the grass fed and finished. My freezer is always full of like regeneratively farmed beef from various farms.
Mm,
Sometimes I order from Polyface, got to see if I got anything from there right now, but it's either Polyface, White Oak Pastures, or Serendipity Farms in Michigan here.
mhm.
But I just wish it were more available. Like in Whole Foods, I can't find anything unless it's from like New Zealand or Uruguay. So it's
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
I just wish it was more available where I don't have to order from like halfway across the country.
Yeah.
But it's also good. Grass-fed and finished is good for your jaw muscles, right? Because if it's chewier, your jaw muscles get to work like the way they're naturally supposed to work. Because now I don't know if you've heard of the Jawzrsizer thing. It's like a little plastic thing
Yes. Oh
you put
yeah.
in your mouth and you work out your jaw muscle. But the need for that is because all the foods we eat are so soft and melt in your mouth
Yes.
type foods. So that's just another band-aid over a gushing wound, in my opinion. Like we're not solving the root of the problem here. If people want to eat the more softer meat, there's always ways to prepare it properly. There, you said there's entire cookbooks on it. Um, is it usually like a slower cook? You got to cook it for longer periods to get it to that sort of softness.
Well, yeah, different things for different cuts. Yeah, I mean, in general, long and slow can cure a multitude of ills for sure.
Okay.
But a lot of times, for example, for a steak, if you put it in the refrigerator for 2 or 3 days and put some papaya juice on it,
Hmm.
papaya juice has the tenderizer that's in A1 steak sauce and things like that,
Oh wow.
and and just squeeze some papaya sauce on it, and leave it in the refrigerator for a couple of days before you cook, and it'll become much more tenderized.
Wow.
Most people who do, gourmets who do, I mean, everybody has their own technique. I mean, but one is to
Hmm.
sear it on both sides real fast, and then drop the temperature way down. So you sear it, and that seals everything inside. And then you drop it to a very low temperature then for half an hour or so. So
Okay.
but I can tell you this, in general, um, grass finished steaks, you never want to take them past medium. You either want a medium or rare.
Okay.
In fact, we've supplied restaurants that if you ask for a well done grass finished steak, they recommend that you get something else from the menu.
Yeah, because
Uh,
it ends up like a rock, right?
yeah, right.
Yeah. I've made that mistake.
It's just overcooked.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I made that mistake. Now I just like to get my cast iron like piping hot and just sear it on
yep,
both sides where when I cut into it, it's pretty rare.
yeah,
It tastes
uh-huh,
the best. Yeah,
yeah.
so I'm always experimenting with cooking meats and so I'm gonna add that to my list of things I want to try, the papaya juice method. So
Hmm.
thank you for that. Yeah, there's a lot of complexities in cooking and everybody's got their own way of doing things. Chemistry is a huge part of it.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
for sure. That's for sure.
Um, because I'm my main thing is ecology, animal morphology, animal behavior, what they eat to get to the composition they are. But there's like a whole nother category to it, which is the chemistry behind it all.
Hmm.
So it's very fascinating. One another question I had here was your poultry, what percentage of their diet is the stuff that they find in the grass, like the insects and the wild plants versus grain? Are they grain fed as well, or
Oh
just
yeah.
okay?
Yeah, they're omnivores,
Hmm.
and I mean you can, yeah, a chicken can survive. Well, so can a pig. I mean, I know a guy. I mean, I have heard of him. I don't know him personally, but a guy in Tennessee, or I mean, he's Kentucky, I think, and he raises 10 hogs a year in 200 acres of forest and doesn't feed them anything.
Wow,
But yeah, but it takes 200 acres of forest for 10 hogs, and he sells them for like $10,000 a piece. They're
man.
extremely specialty kind of thing. And so omnivores can survive out, but they need a whole lot of land to do it on. So
Mhm.
in most commercial outfits like ours, we supplement with grain in order to actually produce enough to pay the taxes.
Okay.
And our a chicken a chicken will pick up as much as 15%. So the pasture in general becomes more a tonic, a supplement, like a vitamin supplement, as
Mhm.
opposed to to the main part of their diet. And so while it's not the major part of their diet,
Yeah.
just like any supplement that we take, it can have a major, major effect. And so it's that few blades of green material that changes the fat profile, for example, that changes the color from to a deeper orange on the egg yolk,
Hmm.
things like that.
Just a few blades of grass will change that
Yes.
chemistry.
Oh, absolutely. It doesn't take much. So, um, so the pasture becomes a tonic. Now, I will tell you that uh, as as you go into summer and you get more and more grasshoppers and crickets and worms and things in the pasture, the chickens do pick up a lot of that. But again, to do this at scale where you've got a lot, they they cream off as far as they'll range. They cream that off pretty quickly
Okay.
if you have several hundred chickens.
I see. Okay. Yeah, because the Will Harris of White Oak Pastures gave me a very similar answer where he was saying like grain isn't entirely like the bad guy. You need to supplement sometimes and or else they would be starving. They wouldn't find enough food in the land. So there's different qualities to grain, right? Like there's bad grain with chemicals and processed grains, and then there's less processed grains. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yes,
And
well, I mean, yeah, we use all GMO free, non-genetically modified organisms,
mm,
but locally produced GMO free grain that's produced
wow.
right here near us. And it's not, some of it's organic, some of it's not, but it's all tested for glyphosate, Roundup residue, which
Mhm.
is higher standards than organic. And so, uh, yeah, I mean, these omnivores, these birds, they naturally eat seeds. Grains are seeds,
Yeah.
and so again, I want to be careful about. You want to be careful about over demonizing something that's a natural part of their natural diet.
Yeah, because sometimes I see signs at like major chain stores like Panera Bread. They'll advertise that their chicken is vegetarian fed, but it should be omnivores, right? Like they should have not just vegetarian diets. They gotta have access to wild insects and stuff as well.
Well, absolutely, an omnivore's diet, and that's the whole point of an omnivore. They're not a vegetarian.
Yeah.
And so to say it's a vegetarian diet is to deny some of the most fundamentally instinctual needs and desires of the animal's diet.
Yeah, and they're always advertising that on the packaging of chicken breasts and chicken products. Like vegetarian fed is something they stamp on the label, very big font, trying to, as if that's a good thing. But they gotta be omnivores. Because even my chicks, I see how when they see their first fly or something, they get into that predatory mode.
Oh yeah.
They're
Oh
just turned
yeah.
into velociraptors, and it's amazing to watch.
Yeah.
And you don't
Yeah.
have to teach them that. They just need to catch that fly, and they'll gobble it right up. It's gone.
Yeah. That's exactly right. That's exactly
It's
right.
fascinating to see.
Yeah.
So okay, grain fed for a portion of their diet is required because it's grains or seeds. And is corn a big part of the grain feed, or is it just a huge mixture of seeds?
So our rations are primarily corn and whole roasted soybeans and oats.
Okay,
Oats is the small grain, and then you have some mineral and vitamin, organic mineral and vitamin supplement and thing there too.
okay,
Uh, so yeah, yeah, but corn's a big part of it. But again, corn is a it's an American plant. It's
yeah.
a staple. It's a staple American plant.
Okay, yeah. I experimented growing varieties of corn seeds, and it is ridiculous how fast a corn plant grows compared to everything else we got. Like
Yeah, yeah,
it
that's
was
right.
9 feet tall by the midway through summer, and I was like
Yeah,
every day it's like you could watch it grow.
yeah, yeah. That's exactly right. It'll
Fascinating.
grow an inch a day. It's amazing.
They're
Yeah,
just the plant is very resourceful then with the nutrients it takes up, and it just goes straight to growth, I guess. That's
yeah,
it's a fascinating plant.
yeah.
Um,
It is.
are cows? they're ruminant animals, so they got multi-chambered stomachs. Are their digestive systems designed to digest corn, even any kind of corn at all?
So, so there again, it's a matter of volume. Uh, I don't have any problem with somebody grazing corn like it's grass. I mean, corn is there's all this debate. Is that grain or is it grass? Corn, scientifically is actually a grass,
Hmm.
and it just makes a great big seed. Uh,
Okay.
so I don't have any problem with cows eating the corn plant. And if they get a little bit of, the ear of corn with it, it's a matter of how much seed and how much. I mean, like right now, our orchard grass, fescue, bluegrass has gone to seed in the pastures. We're in our third rotation now with the livestock, and the seed heads that they didn't eat the first two times have
Mhm.
gone up third seed, and so the cows are literally going along and they are just clipping the heads off of these grass plants, um, the seed heads off. They love that. I mean, it's like ice cream, and this will go. This will last for 2 or 3 weeks, and then they'll be back down to the blades, and so some of this is about ratio, quantity, and balance. And I don't think it's a sin
Mhm.
to give a little bit of, a handful of corn to a cow,
Yeah.
and any more than it's a sin for you or me to eat whatever, three or four M&Ms. All
Yeah.
right. The problem is if we eat a quart of M&Ms.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when we talk about grass finished, we're talking about that the animal is not fed the quart of M&Ms. They're not fed they're not fed grain, in a bucket. If they get any seeds,
Yeah.
those seeds are coming as a 10% part of an overall plant that they're eating. And that fundamentally makes a difference, because then it's such a small component that they don't get acidosis, and they don't get all the problems that they do.
Okay.
And it changes the nutritional profile. You may be familiar with this new bionutrient food association work that's going on, Dan Kittredge, where they're studying beef, and what makes different nutritional profiles in
Mm.
different animals. And the University of Utah is doing the primary, basic research. And what they've found is that the one element that makes consistent difference of nutritional quality across the board is not age, it's not genetics, it's not climate, none of
Mhm.
this stuff. What it is how many different kinds of plants did the animal eat?
Wow.
Different kinds of plants did the animals eat?
And this
And
this gentleman's name was Dan Kidrick, you said?
Dan Kittredge, yeah, he's
Oh,
he's with
Kittredge.
the Bionutrient Food Association.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna add that to my reading list because I didn't know about it. Bionutrient Food
Mhm.
Association. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I might that might be included in my synthesis paper references section. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, these are topics I we could dive into for a long time, the ecological aspects of regenerative agriculture. But I wanted to shift a little bit toward, I guess, entrepreneurship and media. I want to start off with asking the question, have you heard of the Biggest Little Farm documentary?
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It was a
Yeah,
mind
apricot.
Yeah, it was mind blowing. I really enjoyed that one. And it was similar to how how you took a piece of eroded land and rewilded it and got it going into a productive regenerative farm. They did the same thing. And kind of an entrepreneurship question is how can I do something similar if I want to start a conservation project? Because from my understanding, the biggest little farm owners that made that documentary, they got funding for this idea. And so how would I go about doing that? I just wanted to ask you if in case you knew any had any advice on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, they got a whole pile of money
Yeah.
to do it rapidly. On our farm, we didn't have any money. We were back, 1961, and there was no GoFundMe campaign or that sort of thing. There was no internet,
Mhm.
and so we didn't use any money. We used time and management, and it took us a lot longer. So, money, you can it's amazing how many things you can correct with money if it's if it's carefully managed and carefully channeled
Yeah.
strategically in the right areas. Um, but you can speed things up. I mean, now we lease, we rent and manage numerous properties in the area, and none of them has been as bad as ours was when we started, but some have been pretty close, very, very close.
Okay.
And the thing is, now with our experience, with what we know, with our the capabilities we have,
Mhm.
uh, as Daniel says, we can nuke them with love, and we're able to do on those farms in 2 or 3 years what it took us 20 years to do on our place.
Yeah.
And so you can speed it up if you have more wherewithal.
Mhm.
If you have the capacity to get your organic matter up and to get your fencing in place, to get your water in place. If you have the wherewithal to do that quickly, you can, yeah, you can make progress pretty fast.
Get an operational regenerative system going pretty fast. Okay. Yeah, because I'm just on the beginning of researching how to raise capital for something like that. Because I have this idea of a farm, a regenerative farm that I want to do. It's a very long-term goal where I want to own a regenerative farm similar to Polyface or White Oak Pastures, where it's just a beautiful regenerative system. It produces food for humanity, and I get to record videos and share it with the world on YouTube. That's like a long-term goal of mine. But I would have to hire, soil specialists, horticulturists to help me manage the whole operation because my main specialty and knowledge is the rotational grazing systems of poultry and cattle. And even that I need practice with. So I want to do internships at different farms. Eagle Rock Ranch is a farm that I did a podcast with them recently, and they want to have me over as an intern, a temporary intern. I'm learning as much as I possibly can with the land I have. I'm doing some gardening here, poultry rotation,
Sure. Good.
but I can't have any hoofed animals in my county right now, which makes sense. Right now there's a little over 1,500 subscribers, but it's continually growing and I'm making videos all the time. You see my camera's right here on my desk.
Yeah, I saw that.
If I do get capital and raise capital for an idea, I would definitely use the info in this book because
Yeah.
like it's good to be resourceful and use the wood you got lying around, but if I could just make some bigger infrastructure with, brand new wood that will last me decades, it would really help kickstart this conservation project. But yeah, I've been reading this a lot. I read the intro by Justin Rhodes.
Hmm.
I'm a big fan of his YouTube channel. I actually started watching him like years ago, and I've watched your appearances on his channel. Like all the times you appeared on his channel, I've watched all those videos. So yeah, this is stuff I'm really passionate about. It's like a facet of ecology. Regenerative farming is like a part of ecology, a specific part of it. And yeah, just listening to your podcast was a big reason why I got into it as much as I am, because I'm also passionate about food. Like I would say I'm a health conscious person. So I just wanted to tie my two interests with wildlife species and my interest in health from food. And it just fits. And it's always a great experience learning more about it. It never feels like work to me. Just
Yeah.
learning about regenerative farming never feels like work. Composting. So you have these huge compost piles. And I recently, for the first time in my life, got to touch and feel a massive pile because we got a farm near where I live called Bauer School Farm, and it was mind blowing when I stuck my shovel in there, scooped it
Uh-huh.
out, and steam came out. And
Uh-huh.
I was just holding the soil; it was like almost hot to the touch.
Yep.
So, could you talk a little bit about that? Like, when did you first start composting, and how did it get to the state that it's in right
Oh,
now?
well, so yeah, so we really jumped on this back in the I'm going to say the early 70s. We were feeding hay in the winter, and the cows were on a concrete floor, and so every weekend we would shovel out the floor so it didn't get so dirty and filthy.
Yeah.
And what we found was that in the what we spread in January didn't make any difference come spring, but what we spread in late February and March, it looked like we painted green on the fields. And we realized that we were losing all those nutrients during the winter soil dormancy period. It was too long till the soil could wake up and eat it and metabolize it. So that took us down the path of how do we hold this in the barn. Well, then that put us into the carbonaceous diaper, where
Mhm.
we go to the deep bedding and we put in wood chips and we absorb all that manure and urine and go to the carbonaceous diaper. Well,
Mhm.
then the next step was, well, if we're going to have this carbonaceous diaper in here, we want to compost it so we get additional benefit. In other words, compost is where you take one plus one and make three, because
Mhm.
it synergizes the value. And so that started us in the compost. And over the years, we've used all sorts of different, you know, magic elixirs, and people want us to try their stuff and use their things, and the only thing that we have found that we can rely on that works every single time, all the time, is compost.
Mhm.
Compost is compost is magic. And so
Yeah.
yes, I'm a lover of compost.
So you probably use the compost in various ways, right? Like you stick it underneath plants before planting them, or on the seeds at least, or
Yeah, well, I mean, we certainly use it in the garden, but obviously
okay.
the main thing we use it for is to spread on the pasture.
Oh, okay, for that topsoil and the
Yeah,
grasslands.
that's our the core of our fertilizer program.
So you spread it, and do you like wash it with water to let it sink in, or do you just spread it?
You spread it, and obviously, ideally you watch the weather forecast,
Yeah.
and you spread it ahead of some rain.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
that's ideal. It does, I mean, sometimes obviously you get a forecast that looks good, and then it doesn't rain.
Yeah.
That happens. But there are a few things that make me happier than spreading compost and getting a rain, right after that. That's like
It just did
uh,
all the work for you.
that's like ecological farming nirvana,
Yeah.
to spread compost and get a rain on it.
Because that's like a good rain can be like thousands of gallons of water that you didn't even pay for, and it
Oh
just
yeah,
fell naturally. Yeah, makes sense.
absolutely.
I forgot to ask about native predator issues you may have, and which dog breeds you selected to help protect your flock and your livestock. So you got any major predator issues at all?
So yeah, we have plenty of predators here, and everything that goes bump in the night at 2 o'clock in the morning loves chicken. And so yes, we've used guard dogs. We have a guard goose with the chickens for aerial predators. Uh,
Hmm.
we've we trap when we need to, and the reason that we have the small chickens, the meat chickens in the portable shelters, is they are that way. They're totally confined. We give them, of course, a new spot every day, but
Hmm.
they're confined to that to protect them from weather and from predators. And so there's a lot of things that we do. We graze with the cows around the shelters to keep the grass short. That way, predators feel vulnerable. A great horned owl will come and pick up a possum or a skunk or,
Mhm.
even a small raccoon off the ground, and so or attack it. And so there's a lot of things going on out there that we try to work with
Yeah.
uh, in order to keep the predators down, including our own infrastructure.
And which breed of dog did you say, or that you?
We've used Akbosh,
Hmm.
and right now we have a couple of Maramas.
Okay.
But all the guard dogs are, they're big and white, and they're nocturnal, and they're quite good.
Okay, gotcha. Well, yeah, that's the end of my list of questions, so it's a good time since you have to leave as well. But thank you, Mr. Salatin, for doing this
Absolutely,
interview. Yep, and
absolutely.
I'm gonna edit it, have it uploaded on my channel so
Okay,
other viewers can benefit. Yep.
very
So
good.
thanks again.
Yeah,
Maybe we can do it again sometime.
good. Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank
Take
you
care. All right.
as
Yeah.
well.
Bye
Bye.
bye.